So hi everyone. On behalf of CSM, I wanted to welcome you all to our event. It's such an honor to be here with such an amazing group of women in the industry and men. Shout out to the guys here. I'm super excited to introduce our panel this evening. We have some amazing speakers that are here today. So just to introduce myself, my name is Stephanie Smilowitz. I'm a vice president here at CSM, and this topic of women in sports is something that I'm personally super passionate about, not only because of the work we do here every day, but I am a former college athlete, kind of has been, but I just saw how personally participating and watching women's sports, what it had an impact on my life and those people around me. The resilience, teamwork, time management skills that I need to be successful here at the agency are all things that I learned on the tennis court. And growing up in the 90s, watching Steffi Graf, that was like my life. Maybe because we both are named Steffi, but having someone to emulate like that was just so meaningful and something that I hope we all, believe in helping to rise. So at CSM, we are super proud to represent a lot of women's initiatives and be a part of this movement. So a couple things we've been involved in over the past few years. We are really proud to be a part of the Sports Business Journal mentoring program for women, and I know there's definitely a lot of mentors and mentees here this evening, so thank you for your participation in that. We also have a huge representation of women, not only in our company, but at the senior management level. And we also really prioritize ourselves that we align with brands that kind of align with this female mission and the message overall. So with that, I want to introduce one of our partners. She's the CMO and co-founder of SheIS, Caiti Donovan.
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for joining us. We are super excited to have you guys here, and really excited for both the panelists and for the power speakers that we have. It is going to be a wonderful packed hour of content for you. So first we want to kick off by just sort of setting the stage for why we're here. SheIS was established in 2017, launched to the public last year, and our main mission is to create action where there is intention. So where people are saying, yes, I'm interested in women's sports, which we know that 84% of the sports watching world is interested in women's sports, we want to turn that interest into action. So that's our main goal of this evening, and that's where this panel is going to be a little bit different, we hope, from what you've normally seen in a panel, where we're going to be having some stats up on the back there, so it's a little bit of learn as you go. And then we're going to have some speakers after our panelists to kind of give you some things that you can do literally right now tonight to take action around showing your support for women's sports and making sure that we are, first and foremost, treating it as a business, not as a charity. And second, that we are making sure that we are increasing attendance and viewership, because that's where we are going to see the material impact on this world and on the larger sports world that it exists in. Sound good? Awesome. Woo. All right, we're excited. Okay, so to kind of set the stage for this conversation, first we want to take a larger view. And that is just to say that we are really conscious of the impact that women's sports has on the larger conversation that is happening right now in society around women's empowerment. This is not a moment, it is a movement, and we are only continuing to see diversity and inclusion becoming a more prominent part of the conversation. And we know that when we start to look at the sports world and the inequality that still exists within the sports world, that kind of becomes a microcosm of the larger inequality that we're seeing elsewhere and in other industries. And that is a direct effect because the sports world touches so many other industries. So if we can fix what's happening in the sports world and we can figure out ways to create more equality and more opportunity for women through sports, that will have a residual effect on the rest of women's empowerment and what we see in other industries. So to get us started, I'm going to let our fantastic panelists introduce themselves, starting with Anya.
Hi, my name is Anya Alvarez. I'm a former LPGA golfer turned sports writer, and I am the founder of a media content company called Major League Girls, which focuses on creating content for girls ages between 13 to 18.
Hello. Hi everyone, Camille Currie. I am actually here at LeadDog as CSM LeadDog as a Director of Strategic Communications. Started my career in sports PR, actually the New York Liberty, so it was really exciting to be here with one of the players that was on the team when I was there fresh out of college, Sue Wicks. And also my first boss is here, Amy Shear, so hello. Also from the Liberty time. Athletically, I am a retired former amateur champion boxer, Golden Glove champion, and I was ranked number 2 in the country for 3 years in a row.
Did not know that.
My name is Heather Hardy. I'm a current WBO World Boxing Champion, undefeated at 22-0, and I'm also a mixed martial artist signed with Bellator.
I'm scared, I'm sorry.
It's tough to follow that. My name is Kailen Shariden. I'm from Canada, but I play for Sky Blue FC. I'm the goalkeeper right now. I also play for Canada. I'm on the women's national team there. Represent. Yeah, that's about it for me. I'm hoping to be as good as these guys one day. All of them.
I'm Sue Wicks, former WNBA player, New York Liberty, former college coach, a lot of formers here, and current oyster farmer on Long Island.
Awesome. So like I said, lots of awesome different backgrounds that are definitely going to help us continue this conversation. Okay, so to kick us off, we're breaking this down into kind of 3 sections: past, present, and then where are we going with this in the future. And to sort of start the conversation, we want to acknowledge the fact that women's sports is still new. It's come a long way, but it is still very new in terms of its professional status within the marketplace. However, it's already accomplished a lot. So if you look at a comparison of where the NBA was going into its 23rd season versus where the WNBA is now, they had about the same number of teams, and the WNBA is actually getting a higher level of average attendance versus what the NBA was doing back in the 50s. So what we're really seeing is that there is definitely an appetite for women's sports. So Sue, knowing this kind of information, the first question is going to go to you. What have you seen over the course of your career as a professional athlete and now as a businesswoman in sports that you think is fundamentally shifting the business of women's sports?
So when I first started, I don't think there was a business of women's basketball. There certainly wasn't. You had the opportunity to play overseas. Here as a professional, it did not exist. And through the course that we worked together at the Liberty and currently at the Liberty, it was a new frontier, seeing what sold, because it's a commodity. You're selling something and you have to first know who your audience is. So I think we initially sold to families, and that's where we're at. That was the business. This is very wholesome, good. This is the package. And what I'm seeing now with the conversations with Kia, who's the COO of the New York Liberty, and what you see on social media, because it is a new world, there's a lot of hashtags with social activism. So now it's not just your exterior, what you do, what you produce on the court, who you are as an athlete, which I've always admired. Here's this person, their character. Now it's the interior that you're always talking about. Here's my opinion on this, what's going on in the world. Here's where I stand on this, and so many people vote on that. So you see, when an athlete, if you stand with this athlete, and Nike says, oh, a lot of people are going to stand by this guy, and they're going to buy a lot of Nike stuff, or they're going to stand by this woman, they're going to cash in on that. So your new commodity is a little bit connected to social media, the hashtags, your interior, not just your athleticism, what you produce on the court. We're in a new world that is interesting frontier, but a little bit easier, I think, to market than perhaps what we tried to sell before.
Absolutely. Anya, I'm going to throw the same question to you as a previous LPGA golfer, now moving into the business world, owning your own business. What are you seeing in this shift?
Well, and specifically around the LPGA, I've noticed, I mean, the LPGA has grown a lot since I left the tour in 2014. They have more tournaments, they have higher purses, higher attendance rates. And to kind of piggyback off Sue's point, they have started to lean in more into the activism side than they have in the past. So women's empowerment is a big part of the conversation now within the LPGA, because they're trying to attract more women to the tour and also show that this is a positive place for their daughters to be. But I think what we've seen in regards to why the LPGA has really done so well now is there's been a lot of investment from Asian companies into the LPGA. And so most of their revenue stream from TV comes from Asia. And I think the fact that Asian companies are putting their logos or sponsoring tournaments that are in the US here, like half of the tournaments in the LPGA are sponsored by Asian companies. Mm-hmm. So they see a market and they're putting real money behind the tour and also behind the players. So we see a lot of Asian players who are dominating the LPGA tour. And I think that to me speaks to why putting actual money into something actually works, because you can reap results from that. And the LPGA is stronger for it. I mean, people definitely have their own opinions of whether or not that's good for the tour, that there's not more Americans dominating, but I don't see an issue with it because now the tour is a lot more international and we get a lot more eyes on us as golfers.
Excellent. And that actually parlays us really nicely into what are we seeing now in the present with that investment. A lot of what we are seeing is that there is definitely an appetite for women's sports. So a couple of things to share with you guys. WWE just recently had their WrestleMania event, which for the first time had women as the main event. They set an attendance record at Met Stadium of more than 82,000 people showing up to that event. We were there, and every single one of those people stayed in their seats for 7 hours worth of content until that main event. But they were all still there, and they were all cheering so loudly, and that definitely demonstrates, again, that appetite that is there and the investment that WWE has really put into their female superstars. And in a similar light, the recent Final Four for women saw 275,000 people coming down to Tampa for that weekend, and more than 20,000 people showing up to just the final game, which was setting record attendance for them. So we know that there is definitely an appetite here. We're seeing strong numbers in hockey with online streaming of the recent NWHL All-Star game, reaching over 1 million viewers on Twitter over the course of their All-Star weekend. We've seen softball numbers on ESPN and breach 1.5 million or higher for every single one of their world championships at the NCAA level for the past 3 to 4 years. And then we're also seeing things like the Women's World Cup selling out in 30 minutes this year, which was a record sellout. And seeing LPGA attendance and viewership increase by 32% for their most recent tournament that they just held. So again, it's an acknowledgement that there is definitely an appetite here. And so knowing that, Kailen, I'm going to shoot this over to you because it is a World Cup year, and we're all super excited about it. So how do we really encourage the fans to take notice of this incredible progress that we've seen, but really appreciate the unique value that women's sports brings to the landscape?
I think the obvious first answer is media. It needs to be promoted a lot more. I think that's the biggest thing, and on so many different platforms that we have the availability for it now. I think that, and along with creating an event. I think when our national team went to Rio, and we came back with the bronze and we brought it back to Canada, the biggest thing for us was creating that environment every single game we came home and we played. And it's about creating that environment now at Sky Blue, creating that environment in the NWSL, bringing in families, like you were saying, but also attracting sponsorships and allowing those players to be put on higher platforms so that they're looked up to a lot more. Having players like Sam Kerr in the league, Kelly's, the Carlys, all these people in the league attract those kind of fans that we want, but allowing them to come to an event where it's more than just a game. It's a game and it's a rivalry against another team, but every game matters and there's always something else to do as well. Having those extracurriculars outside the stadium before the game, having those extra events to participate in. I think it allows it for more of an event for an evening with your family or something to do other than just I'm going to see this soccer game or this hockey game or this basketball game. Because we could do that on our couches now. We actually have that ability, which is incredible. But it's more, how can we get these fans to want to be at our games and to give them an opportunity to not just sit there and watch, but to really feel like they're a part of it. And I think when we came back and we want to bring these to our stadiums, we have that opportunity. And it's just about pushing it each step farther. What can we do next year? What can we do this year to make it more of an enjoyable event?
Yeah, and that fan experience is really important in the storytelling that kind of goes into that for the overall fan experience. Heather, I want to throw the same question to you because you have, I think, a unique perspective coming from both the boxing world and the MMA world. What are you really seeing with fan engagement and how would you like to see that increase?
It's not so much fan engagement. You know, like part of my career, or most of my career, women's boxing is still in its infancy, almost so to speak. 2012 was the first year that females were allowed to box in the Olympics, so we're just starting to see girls boxing on television. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Girls boxing on television, getting signed to big promotional companies. When me and Camille were in the amateurs, it was so rare to even see a female on a fight card, let alone to headline something on Showtime like we see now. And I say that to say this, my career was built mainly because I understood the business of the sport. And from my very first fight, I was banging out ticket sales, really similar to what you said, to families, to my friends, to neighborhood people, trying to get them to support me financially so the promoters would put me on the card. And for my very last fight, I fought at Madison Square Garden for my world title in October. And they put me on the card because the main event was kind of not that great. And they asked me to sell tickets, which it was a big fight for my world title. Between me and my opponent, we sold nearly $60,000 in tickets. That's nearly 400 seats at the small garden. And the numbers went like this. HBO allocated $10,000 to my fight and $4 million to the main event. So while fan engagement is important because all the fans were there to see us, the money still isn't being distributed. And I think that that awareness is what can change that, right? To say that the same guys who've been running boxing since Mike Tyson was winning world titles are keeping their money in.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, we were going to hold on that idea because that is definitely part of our future conversation. But I first do want to also focus when we're talking about fan engagement. I think one of the parts to that is engagement with the young fans and how we get young girls to participate in sports and what that means for the pipeline of sports and who's coming up within the elite fields. So Sue, also I'll throw this back over to you. In terms of your participation in sport, how has that helped you personally and professionally from a growth perspective?
So interesting. I mean, it's hard to separate. I'm sure it's right across the board here. I don't know if there's a separate me outside of being a basketball player, even if I've been retired for 20 years. I don't know how to separate that, who I am and what I am, and my ability to explore and find out who I am was possibly helped by sports and the confidence and that idea that you're accountable for this person when you're part of a team, so you better know who this person is, and you find out the strength of this person and when this person breaks, and if this person gets back up, and this person I'm talking about is me. But these things, I don't know how to separate them. They are going through this process that is sports, that is the real deal sports, not just hashtags with the things we're talking about, how to sell sports. The real deal of a sport is doing a lot of losing and getting back up and going back out there with the idea that you are going to win again. And I think that the human drama of that is why we will always return to sports, why we will always watch sports, because there's no formula. When you watch a sports, the drama of watching two athletes in a ring that is human drama that will never get boring. So this being forged, the person that is forged from participating in sports, and it's not being a champion by winning, it's by losing, and all those different things that happen are what we admire in other humans. You know, in the sports field, it's when we talk about it's just a small, safe place that this occurs. We admire people that get up and crash down and get back up again. I think there's a golfer that just happened to, and the whole world's on fire because this is the theme, the story that makes us human, and it's beautiful and gives us chills and makes us smile, and that is sports. So, how's it helped me through life? I don't know. It got me through this big, long question, I guess.
Perfect. You know, it spins all over the place. So part of the participation hurdles that we are seeing, there it goes, is that one of the biggest hurdles is the actual culture of sport. So Kailen, tell us a little bit about, you know, you are entering into your career, you've seen it firsthand as a young athlete now coming into the professional ranks. Why is it important for the culture of sports to really embrace young girls coming into this sport?
I think it's really important to embrace it because of exactly what she said. It's a lot of losing, and that's not highlighted. But at the same time, for us as the ones just entering this career, as speaking for myself personally, I wasn't completely aware of that. I was ready to go in hot-headed and win every single game because that's what you see. But at the same time, I think that being on two separate teams right now also allows me to see all sides of that, the ups and the downs, but also being able to pick yourself up because nobody else is going to pick you up. And allowing those girls to see that. They see us every day failing, and succeeding, but they go for the ones who are succeeding the most. And they want to be like those ones. And that's amazing. But wait until now we pass them, and now we're the ones that they want to be like. And that's what we're waiting for as young girls. We want to be that next one who's at the top. And then the next one comes and we want to be like that one. And it's just this constant process. But what we don't see and what I didn't see growing up was this person underneath who was fighting and then the next person coming up who was fighting. And I think that's a really important battle that we learn along the way that should also be highlighted along the way. Of, okay, I lost this amount of games, but I crushed it in this last one, and that's why I'm on top. I didn't come on top because I won everything on the way. I'm on top because I lost, I got up, I lost, I got up. But we don't see that. And I think that's really important for young girls to see that and to be a part of that process. I mean, there's so many ways that you can become a professional. And unfortunately, when I was growing up, there wasn't a ton of options for professional women's soccer. But I knew that at some point we were going to make it happen, and I was going to be there when it did. But I think the biggest thing for me at that point was college soccer, and to just get that opportunity to play in college, get a degree, and then see where I could go with it, and see if I could keep pushing that passionate dream that I had when I was younger, and then allow the children under me to do the same thing, to see that it is possible. We can go through college and then keep going. How far can we push it? We have Olympics, we have World Cup, now we have a professional league that's succeeding right now. Can we keep pushing it to the next level? It's just things like that. Can we highlight those big events for little girls to see that it's not all about the success, but what can we learn along the way?
It's Instagram versus real life.
Exactly.
So, and I mean, a part of that reality is the fact that right now a young girl looking at a career in sports doesn't necessarily see something that is going to be financially viable for her. So this brings us into our future conversation. How are we setting up the sports world to, and specifically the women's sports world, to be better invested in, for the athletes to be better invested in, and what we are seeing right now with the WWE, and I'll come back to what we saw with WrestleMania, but definitely with what they've been doing across the board for the past 3 or 4 years. And since their fans called out to give divas a chance, they changed their entire structure as a sports league, as an entertainment industry leader, to really focus on how they were elevating and talking about their women superstars. And they turned them from divas into superstars. They turned them from having 15-second air times and doing walks around the rink to having now full matches and now main events. And the result of all of that work is that they've seen a 31% increase year on year in their overall revenue. They now are a 70% revenue from their media business. And a lot of that is coming from the engagement directly with their female superstars and how their fans are interacting with them. So what we kind of want to parlay that into in terms of an investment conversation is saying, you know, we know that we have examples of investment that is working out there. And how can investing in women's sports really help the overall growth of the sports landscape? And Camille, I'm going to throw that question to you first.
Sure. Investing in, women's sports can be significant. It is significant for many different reasons. I think I was reading a stat that pre-Title IX, it was 1 out of every 28 women and girls were involved in sports. And now post-Title IX, I think it's 2 out of 5. So that goes to show that the sort of the passion for sports is growing, and that women now growing up and they have children are sharing with their children they want to be involved, and they want them to be a part of a team to learn confidence, focus, persistence, all the wonderful things that we learned along the way as athletes. From a business perspective, I think that many brands nowadays are starting to see that it could be lucrative, and I as a comms person, I really want it to be authentic because it can really be impactful to the future of women and sort of how they see each other, see themselves, and being able to share those stories of success through the brand's perspective or through emulating the brands, I think can be really impactful. So I just want it to be authentic in how they're really telling the real story of women in sports.
Absolutely. Heather, I'll throw it to you next in terms of, I think, what you were touching on before with the variance in investment that you're seeing in your sport, and what would you like to see change?
Sure. Boxing is a little bit different than soccer and basketball because there's no girl boxing and boy boxing. They don't have girl shows and boy shows. They have one show, and the problem is women often were fighting for one spot. Like they had this one spot at a time. Like I'm sure Camille can tell you the amount of shows even today that have more than one spot for a female. I mean, it's next to none. Like sometimes you go, wow, the 2 girls are fighting on the same show because they give you one spot to fight for. So it's extremely frustrating when or at least myself, when I know I might not be the best fighter. I never came out and always said like I'm the best fighter. But I am the best at putting asses in the seats. So when you don't put me, when you don't put me on the card, I can open up my mouth and say what's going on here. It's like straight up discrimination. Like you have me selling out shows, but you're not paying me any money. So Ronda Rousey, you talk about the WWE, really showed the world that there is an interest in female fighters. Like there was this stigma on female fighters. No one wants to see you, and like I look like Ronda Rousey, so like it was like, don't tell me that people don't want to see me fight. Look how much money she just made. And boxing is just extremely slow in the turnaround. In MMA, they treat me like a queen. I went to a press conference last week. They sent me a car. I was like, I don't have to pay for this. I'm like a real athlete. So it's like 2 different worlds. You're competing in both sports.
Amazing. Anya, I want to throw that investment question to you as well, but with the lens of you're now wanting investment for a sports-related startup, and what have you really faced, and why is it important to be investing in women in sports on the business front as well as on the sports front?
Right, so my company focuses on creation of content for girls, and I've sat in several pitch meetings with investors who ask me, do girls really like sports? And I don't, I kind of know that the conversation is over at that point because they already have this inherent belief that girls aren't interested in sports the same way that boys are. And I know that that is not true given the fact that we have done focus groups and the fact that 2 out of 5 girls play sports under the age of 18, the fact that I go to WNBA games, NWSL games, LPGA events, and all I see are girls with their parents or girls with their friends there. So when I hear someone asking me that question, it's just, for me, it's a lack of awareness and understanding of how this space has really grown. And you know, SheIS, they have their ear to the ground, and I have my ear to the ground, just paying attention to all the trends of where we see the growth taking place. And it may not look big from people who are maybe used to seeing like 50,000 people in a stadium, but when you look at the fact that the LPGA's attendance and ratings were up by 32% this year, that's huge. That is a remarkable jump in 1 year. And that is because they made a real investment, or they had people that were investing. To your business point though, you know, it's tough because when you want to make a difference and you're fighting for every penny, it kind of can feel discouraging at times, because you're like, okay, how much longer do I have to keep fighting to get people to believe that there is a market here? And now we are starting to see there are big companies that are starting to step up to the plate and putting advertisement dollars into trying to engage women. Our goal is to engage the future of sports though, and we believe girls are the future of sports. And so how can we get companies to really start thinking about the future rather than an audience that maybe isn't quite there for them yet, and say, okay, can you make a 5-year investment? And what could this landscape look like if you just stayed committed to this, stay committed to this? You look at the NBA, they weren't profitable right away. MLB wasn't profitable right away. PGA Tour wasn't profitable right away. Now, I would say for the most part, they're making money. So why can't we make that same investment into women?
Absolutely. And I mean, two of those that are making that investment that we're really seeing, one is our founding partner, Adidas, who we have seen them, and if you haven't seen the She Breaks Barriers campaign, definitely look it up. They are doing some incredible work through that across all sports. But specifically within the media landscape, they've recently announced investing in putting high school girls sports onto TV, so that there is an acknowledgement of not just professional level, but amateur level sports as well, and how that pipeline really needs to be fed so that girls see other players that look like them succeeding in a national environment. And similarly, we see that BBC Sports increased their coverage of women's live sports by 1,000 hours in 2018, and continues to increase that over across the UK, and definitely with what they're doing here in the US as well. So slowly but surely we are starting to see more of this investment coming through. But the question that we all kind of need to ask ourselves is, if men's sports aren't just for women, and we see the NFL has 45% of its fan base is now female, then women's sports aren't just for women. So how do we engage the entire population, the entire sports space? Anya, I'm going to throw that back to you.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's a funny conversation, because I've heard it so often where people are like, well, women don't go to women's sporting events. I'm like, well, why are they the only ones that we're depending on to get into seats? Like, there are men too, and there are young boys, and to me, it's like a blind spot that the men's leagues had when they weren't focusing on women, right? Like, then when the NFL realized, oh, women actually like football, let's start investing in them and getting them to football games, they started making a lot more money. So I think we need to look at it as a collective issue, because to me, if we're talking about gender equality too, it's a collective issue. If we can get men into the seats of women's sporting events, then they will respect them as athletes and see, oh, maybe they should be getting paid more. Maybe they should be receiving sponsorships. I passed along a study to Caiti recently around men that got more exposure to women's sports, their bias towards female athletes began to decrease. Well, shocker, right? Like when you start to see how incredible these women are and how hard they work, then you'll be more inclined to support them. And whether that means buying a jersey, going to games, watching them on TV, whatever it is that you can do in terms of the type of support you can give, I think we need to be looking at it holistically. And I mean, it just makes business sense too, right? Like, if you can get everybody's money, why not?
Absolutely. Camille, do you want to speak to that from your perspective?
Yes, jumping on Anya's point, collective, I think that's really important. I also think it's also sort of a mind shift change culturally that, I mean, everyone knows here that women sort of lead, sort of we're the neck, if you will, and the men, I suppose, are the head. But in terms of politics, when women make decisions as a whole, usually the trends shift that way. Culturally, usually the trends shift that way. And it's really important, I think, for parents, men and women, mother and father, to bring all their children to sporting events. Because sort of to your point about the data, the more that young boys and men and teenagers see women competing at a high level, succeeding, really giving their all on the court, in the ring, on the field, they will begin to start having the mind shift and perhaps get into the conversation in social media with hashtags and be more active, and that there really should be some equity in sports, as we know is really important. So I think it starts with a mind shift, but also bringing your children to soccer games and WNBA games, really to see women compete at a higher level that we can, and we're actually really good at it.
And LPGA tournaments.
Yes.
All right, well, to finish us off on the panel here, we're going to do kind of the lightning round a little bit. So starting with Sue, and this will be the same question for everybody, but in one sentence, 3 words.
Then why start with me? Okay.
So what can we, the people in this room, on our live stream, do to help share athlete stories and promote them as role models?
That's great. Well, obviously we're all athletes, so we're going to think from where we're standing. So give them a story, and hopefully, not to be on a soapbox, but I think sports are all about character. I really do. I think it's about character, and that's one thing. I don't think it knows a gender. And I don't know if our society focuses on that. We focus on a lot of numbers. We focus on a lot of sensational things, and character is not very sensational. And it's the thing that we hope when we have our kids participate in sports. That's the gold that they take away for the rest of their lives. That's the value. When we watch sports, that is not what everybody cheats, and that is horrible. Every institution, it seems, in America cheats. And it's so hard for an athlete. I think that when we spend so much time with the rules and not cutting corners and doing things the right way, and then we feel so betrayed when we see a coach, the whole maybe entire NCAA cheating, all of these things. This attack, what we believe is the building fundamental sport, the reason to enter the whole thing as Americans is it builds character. So to throw that out the window is really disheartening. So as an athlete, your character, at the end of the day, this is all you have. This is the only currency, and it's more valuable than any money that we'll ever earn as women. Even if we get to be right there with men, is this the most valuable thing? So maybe sell those things that are considered not so important anymore. So keep selling our character, keep selling that thing that I really think that when I see women participate in sports, it's really, they get it right. It's almost the last frontier of amateur sports. Even when we're professionals, we're still damn amateurs, but there's a beauty to that. So keep selling our character, keep selling those things that are the important things that we always say, oh, we're going to send our kids down to learn these different things. Keep selling that. Remember, that is the important thing. And that if you want to be a role model, don't be because you have these great shoes. Don't be the role model for the shoes. Don't be the role model because you got on a bandwagon of some social issue that is of the moment. Be something rock solid. And I think that's the teammate you want. That's the person you want next to you. And I think that's you probably want your child emulating and looking up to. So be that, try and attempt to be that. Even when you fail and you fail and you fail, you get up and you try again.
Excellent answer. Kailen?
I think it's about giving female athletes the platform that they deserve to provide the fans and the watchers and the people who have no idea who we are an opportunity to figure out who we are and to learn about us and to find out that we have these incredible women with these incredible skills and talents, and that you have no idea walking down the street, because we do walk down the street every day in your lives and you don't know who we are. But if you saw Steph Curry walking down the street, you'd have exactly every single idea in your head who he is. There's no doubt in my mind that everybody in this room would know who he was. But if you saw Heather walking down the street, you'd have no idea. It's not fair. So it's about giving us that platform to explore who we are and allow them to come and find out what incredible skills we have, and allow us to keep showing that and to provide young girls the opportunity to see that, and to see that they can also have these skills if they keep working at it, and to go back and then show our stories about the failing and that it's going to take that. And if they really have that character and that ability to do that, then they can do it as well, and giving them that platform to show us and allowing us to work, unfortunately, with the men right now to build it. Let's partner with them. Let's use their platform as a stepping stone to help us get up there and to be equivalent with them, because that is the way that we can get there at some point. We will be up there. I guarantee you, we will be up there with them. But it's how do we get there? This is one opportunity for us to do that, is to go use the men as a stepping to get up there with them and to allow us to share our stories and our abilities with the world.
Heather?
That's a good one.
Thanks.
I was going to say that. Honestly, like, I would put it in two ways. Absolutely that you need the platform. When I crossed over to MMA, my following went, and like, you hate to talk about Instagram because it's so cliche, but it's really important now when you think of in terms of investors and people who want to sponsor you. I went from like 20,000 followers to over 150,000 followers just because Bellator put me on Spike TV and promoted me all across their social media platforms, because MMA is kind of way ahead of other sports. Boxing never did that for me. Boxing doesn't even do that for their male athletes. So the promoters need to promote their teams, their fighters, their shows. The promoters need to go out and make an effort. What I always ask my fans, from my very first fight, my first boxing match, I had to sell a ton of tickets. So I asked everyone, just like, they weren't even boxing fans, they were Heather Hardy fans. They were like seeing this single mom grinding, trying to make a living, and they supported me. And through 22 professional boxing matches, 3 MMA fights, my fan kept growing, the base kept growing, I kept selling tickets, because I'd ask people, take somebody with you that never seen women box before. Make them women's boxing fans. Let them see, when they see the whole show, there's no different. And ask them to tweet about it. Ask them to put me on their Instagram story. And that's how people get to know. So you have to engage your fans and ask them as well. Like, promoters aren't helping us. We got to do this stuff ourselves. So that's why I always ask my fans and my friends, my coworkers, come see me fight.
Camille?
I would say for brands, to Kailen and Sue's point, it's really important to share the story. People really want to get invested in who they're going to watch play. You know, what is she about? What does she do? What makes her tick? What's her story? What's her background? So if they continue to and highlight sort of the personal pieces within what makes the player tick, I think that's going to be really important. And for fans, it's going to games. It's actually buying tickets. It's thinking outside of, you know, I could go to a Knicks game, no offense, or I can also go to a Liberty game. Let's go to a soccer game. Let's do something that's a little bit different to support. And then since everyone's on social, you know, get involved. Get involved in some of those hashtag movements, so that more people are being able to have a platform like these wonderful athletes.
Last but not least.
So I'm going to draw from a recent event that took place, which was the Augusta Women's National Amateur. And leading up to that tournament, there was so much promotion leading up to it. It was a big, big deal. You had profiles of the girls that were competing in all the golf magazines. They were on Golf Channel. They were going on NBC. They were everywhere. And it ended up being the highest rated amateur golf event since 2007. Obviously, you know, Augusta being played at Augusta played a huge role in that, but had they not promoted the tournament at all and just kind of were lazy about the promotion because they thought maybe they could just piggyback off of it being at Augusta National, it wouldn't have gotten the same viewership. Then after the winner, Jennifer Kupcha, won, she was on Jimmy Kimmel, she was on the Today Show, she was back on the Golf Channel. So she got pushed out there again, and her life is going to change because of the promotion that she got, not just because she won the tournament, but because media paid attention to it, and now sponsors know who she is, golf fans know who she is, and they're going to want to sponsor her. I cannot stress enough how important it is for media to start investing in covering women's sports. I can't stress that enough. I actually wrote an article once that said female athletes should sue media for as a result, because of the lack of coverage they don't receive, ends up in them not getting equal pay or equal opportunity for sponsorships. The media plays a huge role in the disparity that women's sports have in terms of equal pay. And if you can just invest a little bit more, look at where you're spending your dollars and say, okay, we have 80% of our coverage going to men. What if we put 10% more towards women? What if we just made that small investment and saw what would happen if we were consistent with our investment rather than just occasionally doing a women's sports story and saying, oh, well, that didn't do very well, so this is why we don't cover women's sports. Make a real concerted investment, and I think you will see real change in terms of the audience that starts to consume that content.
All excellent answers. We want to now give this room some real pointed action opportunity to follow through on everything that our panelists have said, but also to be able to literally take action tonight for women's sports, to demonstrate your investment in women's sports tonight. So first up is our executive director for SheIS, joining us all the way from Toronto, Canada. Miss Jillian Svensson.
Yeah, let's get it going. Just push it to the side if we wanted
Canada's in the
to.
house. I'm not going to do a Celine Dion or a poutine joke because it's just too cliche. Maybe I'll say out and about a couple of times and you can all it's my privilege to be the executive director of SheIS, along with Caiti, Donovan, and Brenda Andrus. And thank you all for coming tonight. You know, SheIS is not only, I'm thinking we're a year old May 1st, right? We're not even a year old. And we're the only organization that has actual partnerships, commissioner level partnerships with almost every women's pro league in North America. And also World Boxing Council, World Surf League, WWE, US Open, USTA, and their women's divisions. And they're all at the table with us. And so when you support SheIS, you're supporting all of this. This is a dream come true because we have actual connections with every league. And we're bringing them to the table, and we're discussing exactly this, and you know, everything I was going to say has already been said because we're doing what the women are saying to do, which is mobilizing those people who say, I'm a fan of women's sports. You know, you go to any panel or any conference, and we all go to a million of them as sports business professionals, and everyone puts up their hand, and we all feel good about ourselves, and it's, oh, it's the Olympics, yay, waving my flag, go women. And then for the next 2 years, we do zero, we do nothing, we might retweet, which is important, but it's not moving the needle. So my takeaway for everyone in this room, and let's not pretend we're not on our phones, I was tweeting, I was Instagramming. I'm 42, y'all, and I am Instagramming, I'm on the gram, I'm doing this because they're forcing me to, Katie's forcing me to. But she totally is, like, honestly. I'm like, can I just get back on Facebook because I'm 42 and that's my thing. But at the end of the day, what's happening is we need to mobilize everybody to go beyond the retweets and the likes. So what I'm really asking everyone to do is when you go home tonight, take the SheIS challenge. This is our 6-month campaign that's happening right now. Watch the video first. You will want to run through a wall. I'm going to run a marathon. I don't run. I'm not sporty. I was a dancer on a Disney cruise ship. That's not my thing. We all have our gifts. Sport is not mine. And yet you watch this video and it fires you up. So the next step is to take the SheIS challenge. Literally all we want is your name, your email, and where you live. And every month we're going to send you an email that says, this is what's happening in the world of women's sports. This is where it is. This is where you can buy a ticket. This is where you can view it. You can stream it. We're giving you that information. We're taking away the barrier of access, and we're mobilizing your intention into action. So that's my takeaway from a SheIS perspective, is to really take the SheIS challenge and let us give you the content, let us give you the information for you to really move that needle of buying a ticket and viewing women's sports, because we've heard it from this panel. That is what we need to do. That's one of the things we can do to really move the needle. So, out and about, poutine, Celine Dion forever.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I am Kia Clark. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, I should say the current Chief Operating Officer of the New York Liberty, the WNBA team here in New York. And I would normally start with the typical how many people in here have been to a Liberty game, but I see so many familiar faces right now, like people who sold sponsorships and tickets and ran the team are here tonight. So I'm just really excited and feel super familial about this incredible panel and this evening to talk about women's sports. And women in sports. So, you know, with that, I guess I would start by saying, as women and to the supportive men in the room, you have a unique opportunity in supporting the Liberty in particular here in New York as an original franchise, as a franchise that stood the test of time with highs and lows and moves to different arenas. You can really, you know, show your support in a meaningful way by doing those things. So I guess I would also take a step back and say, thank you to everyone over these 23 years, this is our 23rd season, who have taken the time to watch on television, who have taken the time to go out and see a game with your coworkers, with your family, with a group. It means something to our business, it means something to our players. And I think, you know, we really found our voice as a league and as a team where we really can represent, you know, the elite female basketball player, and at the same time, just as Sue was explaining, you know, represent all that we've always been since the beginning. It is about this intersectionality of women and equality throughout sport. So now that everybody thought about who I thanked for coming to the game, if you're in that bucket of people who didn't come to a game and you didn't watch on television, I'd be happy to extend the opportunity for you to do so. We're less than a month out from our home opener. And I like to say wherever the ball bounces, that opportunity is there. And you know, that ball may be bouncing in Westchester County Center, where our primary home is right now. And we also have this two unique opportunities at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn this season. We'll be playing a preseason game on May 9th. We'll be playing a regular season game there on August 11th. So please come out, witness what these women do, and be inspired.
Oh wow, look at all of you. What have we got there? Hey, my name is Elise Lehew. I'm the general manager of Sky Blue FC. I've been the GM for 8 days.
Crushing it.
In the role. I'm a freshman in the role, but don't let the baby face confuse you. I've been in women's pro sports for 12 years now. So been around. I want to thank the panelists. Even though I've been around women's sports for so long, I learn something every time I get to listen to other women in the sport. So I thank you for that, and I gained a lot of business knowledge along the way with that. One quick thing, I'm celebrating actually my 10th year. I started a nonprofit. It's a girls leadership and soccer academy. I just use soccer as the vehicle. It's really to get girls to learn life skills and do leadership. We operate in 3 countries. We're mostly focused on young Latinas specifically. So we operate in the US, Mexico, and Colombia. And as I was listening to the panelists and talking about what it means for young women as well, for me growing up, sports. I'm pretty shy, I'm going to be honest. I'm shy, I'm an introvert. I like to blend into the wall as much as I can, I'm going to be honest. I know you're wondering why I'm in this role as a GM, but sports was always my alter ego. Sports was the place where, you get your cape on. You get to sort of be somebody else, and you get to bring all those great aspects of yourself into a new arena and just blow it out of the water, right? You get to have that space to be really proud about yourself and who you are. So for me, when I was thinking about young women in sport and what it does, and also for grown women, let's be honest, to have that space to really just be yourself and to be able to shine, I think is so crucial. So obviously here talking about what we can do as women. One thing while I'm standing here, and Kailen mentioned it earlier, that you don't recognize all of our women pro athletes, and we only get I think 3.8% of the media attention. It's hard to get to know our athletes, right? So as I'm sitting here, we actually have another goalkeeper in the room. Can you please stand up? Sure. Yes. So we have another pro athlete in the room, and there might be. Are there any other pro athletes? I don't want to miss anybody. But Kimberly plays in NWHL. Another goalkeeper in the room. Yes. thank you for standing up. I just wanted to recognize, I heard, at one point in my career, you get to the top, you should always take the elevator back down and bring other people up with you. So I just wanted to recognize we have another pro athlete in the room that's with us today. And please support their leagues as well. But call to action, so we play in an exotic place called Piscataway. It's just across the water. We're not far away, okay? We play on the campus of Rutgers. So obviously my challenge to you today is, please come out and support us. Kailen's an absolute badass. That's kind of a natural goalkeeper tendency, but she's an incredible athlete. Really encourage you to come out and watch her game. On the way out today, I'm going to make this super easy on you. You all have an envelope with 2 tickets to a Sky Blue game. We're actually celebrating a Champion Women Night coming up in May, so I encourage you to come out. I welcome you purchasing additional tickets on top to bring a group of friends out to the game as well, so please consider doing that on the way out. But again, I thank you to the panelists and this opportunity to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Kelly Coleman. I'm kind of, feel like the oddball a little bit. I am head of global events at Nielsen. I had a past in sports. I worked at the New Jersey Nets before they went to Brooklyn. I'm here because Shauna, who works at LeadDog, was my first boss and one of my favorite bosses. So I have a passion for sports. I played soccer. I played volleyball. I wasn't that good. I'm like you. I was a dancer. But I did it anyway because I wanted the character and partly because, we had our first soccer team come to my high school and I wanted to be on it just to say I was. But in the true Nielsen form, I thought I wanted to lead with some stats. And I didn't have time to put this down, but I thought it'd be helpful for the conversation because the one thing I took away from this is data fuels change, right? And I know, from Nielsen, that's my point of view, but it's so important for people to be informed, for businesses to be informed, for their employees that are making these business decisions to be informed. So a couple of stats that I had my team pull before I got here. Women control 1/3 of the world's wealth. That's $39.6 trillion, which represents a 17% increase over the past 5 years. By 2028, women will control 75% of worldwide discretionary spending. 75% of businesses have women in senior management positions, but are only represented in 24% of all senior management positions around the world. And companies in the top quartile in terms of gender diversity are 15% more likely to outperform in the bottom quartile. So those are just like some quick stats that I pulled that I thought would be helpful as we talk about data and in fueling the change in sports and in all industries. I won't go in depth about what Nielsen is. We know what we do. We power data. We're a performance measurement company. Hopefully all of you guys are using Nielsen data to better market to your consumers. So we can skip to the next slide. So I wanted to talk about what Nielsen is currently doing to amplify and bring a voice to women, not just in sports, but in lots of different areas. So here are a couple of just reports that we have been doing since 2011. And these reports are available from a consumer standpoint, and we also have these insights provided to our clients. And one of the ones that I wanted to call out, which I got when we were talking with some of the panelists earlier, the Women in Sports report that we launched in 2016, is, it's huge for people to have that insight and data at their fingertip to make accurate decisions on their business and their objectives. Some of the other ones that I wanted to call out, the African American Women Report, affectionately at Nielsen we call it the Black Girl Magic Report. It was the most downloaded report. We launched that in 2018. These are all available online or in articles that will give you some insights about them. But that report talked a lot about how African Americans are consuming and what they're consuming, from their media habits to their purchase habits to their digital habits, all of that. And those are key insights in driving change in the buying power, in the advertising, in the sponsorship dollars, the power of she. Some of these are all connected to our diversity intelligence series reports. They get released every year or either every other year, depending on the cycle. And then the other piece I wanted to talk about, as we're all work for different companies, whether they're sports companies, media companies, or whatever, brands, Nielsen does a lot around ERGs. And I don't know if a lot of companies have those, or a lot of people have those opportunities at their company, but they're employee resource groups. And Nielsen has a strong employee resource group, which is called WIN, Women in Nielsen. And so if you go to the next slide, this is key in how we move the needle. And we've been in this space for a very long time. I have just stepped down as co-lead for our African American employee resource group. But I'm very active in WIN as well, but I wanted to highlight some of the things that we are doing that you guys can leverage in your companies if you're not already doing that to help support the business. And these things that I've called out are around pay disparity, maternity leave, things like that that matter to whether you're in the sports, you're an athlete, or you're working behind the scenes in the industry. Those things matter, and we've done a lot of development within Nielsen to change that culture. And WIN has been the catalyst to do that. If you go to the next slide. And then this is just kind of an executive review of some of the things we did. Recently, our new CEO, David Kinney, just signed the LEAD Network for International Women's Day. He just signed that pledge, which was key in having a point of view, which is another piece of it, driving your companies to have a point of view around the things that are affecting women. Because, as Nielsen, we are measuring what consumers are watching and buying and listening to. And so it's important that internally that reflects what's going on. So things that are affecting consumers are affecting us as workers every day. And so it's important that these ERG groups or business resource groups are able to leverage that. So I just kind of wanted to call out, I won't go through all of these, but the expanded maternity leave was huge for our company. We have 38,000 members. We're in 77 countries worldwide. It's about 47,000 employees at Nielsen. So there are ways that you can affect change, whether it's on the field or off the field at your companies. So I just wanted to highlight those things for everyone.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, Rick Nato with the New York Rangers. First, I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I feel like Jillian and Katie had reached out and asked if I would be a part of this. And I was incredibly honored because I looked at some of the names that were up here. I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to add to this conversation, but I'll do my best because it's something that's near and dear to my heart, and it's something I'm glad there's other males in the room. I hope someday that we have more males attending these events and putting their support and power behind this movement and trying to engender more equality and opportunities for women and girls. And just a little personal story. I grew up in Massachusetts playing hockey. I was the oldest of three, and my sister had no choice but to play hockey because if she wanted to hang out with us, she was going to be the goalie so that my brother and I could practice. And she played hockey her whole life, and she still plays today. And what's incredible is that growing up during the 80s, the ice hockey scene was quite different. And my sister was the only girl who played hockey in our community. And to watch the journey she had to go through, the challenges she faced just to play a game that she loved, was something that was inspirational, right? And she would go to the rink while the rest of us would go in the locker room and start getting changed. She would shuttle off to this closet somewhere in the corner of the ice rink, removed from the team experience, removed from all the banter and the camaraderie that's built in the locker room, because she wasn't allowed in. She wasn't able to get in there. And I think, we talked about all the benefits and values of sport and what sport can provide to kids. We're still a long way from where we want to be in providing those opportunities to young girls and making sure that they have the same access to sport that boys do. And I think that's the challenge for all of us. There's a call to action for anybody in this room. It's those of us who have roles. My role at the Rangers is to create youth sports opportunities for kids and to grow our games. It's for anybody that has the ability to have an influence over the youth sports experience to get involved and make a difference, right? And making sure that the one-size-fits-all approach to youth sports continues to evolve into environments that are welcoming and welcoming for girls, built for girls, experiences that they are going to want to be a part of so that they come into sports, they stay in sports, and they continue to grow through sports participation. We talked a lot about what goes on in hockey right now. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the growth of hockey and how far and how quickly hockey has grown in terms of participation. There's a lot of stats about there's more girls playing hockey now than ever before. And all that's good, and it's great. But I think the cynic in me still looks at it that right now it's only 15% of youth sports participation is female. And in New York City, it's only 12%. And for New Yorkers, that's like, we don't want to be last, right, in anything. And so, for me, that's something we need to get fired up about. And how do we fix that? And I think one of the things we need to be is more intentional. And so one of the things we're doing at the Rangers right now is we are working on creating an entire youth girls hockey ecosystem. From all the way from try hockey for free, all the way up to the highest levels of the game, to make sure that not only are we providing those opportunities, but we're raising the visibility and profile of the sport across the board to inspire more girls to get involved. And going back to the 80s to prevent those issues of girls having to be in the locker room in the corner of the rink while the rest of their team is celebrating in the locker room and doing the things that make sports so wonderful. We are going to eradicate that from the sport of hockey and from other youth sports activities. And I encourage everybody in this room to play a role in that, because it's amazing what the athletes up here have accomplished, and probably have faced a lot of those similar situations and challenges. But it's on all of us to continue improving that for the next generation, and again, send the elevator down, right? And so I encourage all of you to play a role in that. If you can, you have the ability, and support youth athletics and making a difference there. So that's my call to action.
So as a quick recap, for this room, you now have 5 easy to-dos. Take the challenge, go to a New York Liberty game, go to a Sky Blue game, use data in your conversations to support your narrative around women's sports, and support youth development and girls getting into and staying in sports, whether it's through what the New York Rangers are doing and supporting that action, or whether it is through your local community and making sure that more girls are able to get into sport. Easy and doable enough, right? You've already got free tickets, so you're like on the way there. Before you guys all jump up, we do want to shout out a special thank you to the team at LeadDog for being amazing partners in hosting this year. And I'm going to put him a little bit on the spot, but a shout out to Dan, who is the CEO and the leader in action here at CSM LeadDog. Who, in addition to being an amazing partner through his new foundation, True Colors, is helping our team at SheIS to expand and to bring more diversity into sport with a new diversity hire. So we're really grateful for the partnership. Like I said, it's intention into action, and we are doing that with this group and with you all here. So thank you so much for being a part of it.